And then can we see 13? I think these are some smaller ones. You see the previous one, 12. See, so it just, they put up these stones. It was part of their worship. Well, they had these stones up to worship Baal. Well, Jehoram, it's interesting. He decides to get rid of this, and you think, well, man, why is Jehoram? Jehoram's not good. He's not a godly man, and yet he would get rid of this idolatrous stone. And you wonder, well, maybe seeing what happened with his parents and his brother following Baal, and nothing didn't really work out well for them. So maybe a concern that he would fall under judgment. If he was sincere, you kind of wonder, well, why not go farther? Why not get rid of all the idolatry in the land, which he doesn't do? So there's sort of this interesting move towards something a little bit more godly, at least in his family, but clearly not interesting in going far enough or farther. Verse 3, it tells us, nevertheless, he persisted in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who had made Israel sin. He did not depart from them. Can we see it, 14, John? So this is from hundreds of years older in history, this calf idolatrous worship, because everyone will see what is the sin of Jeroboam. Well, Jeroboam institutes calf worship, right? So these are some old, through archaeology, calves that they found in the area. 15. And then 17. Now we know that he would have put them in, I guess, in the capital in Samaria, in Bethel in the south, and then way up in Dan. Well, we don't even know where Bethel is, but Dan, they know, and they know where Jeroboam's altars were and the sacrificial, the things that they were doing for false gods there. Can we see 19 also? So something along these lines, is what's going on. You think you go back, and so he's saying here in verse 3, he persisted in the sins of Jeroboam, who made Israel sin. So he gets rid of these Baal pillars, but back when Jeroboam was king, so the kingdom had split. Remember, the kingdom splits in two. Rehoboam takes charge. He doesn't want to lower the taxes. The people are like, this is ridiculous. And God has already told Jeroboam what was going to happen. He takes over the northern kingdom, but he's got this concern that people are going to keep going to the south for the temple. Well, the temple's in Jerusalem. It's in half Benjamin, half Judah. It's in the south. How's this going to work for Jeroboam? These people are going to keep going into our enemy country, and this isn't a good idea as far as he's concerned. And so his idea is well, we'll have calf worship. Now, it's possible they weren't actually worshiping the calves. Sometimes they would put the gods on top of these calves. So he may have either said, this calf is Yahweh, is Jehovah, or we worship Jehovah on top of this calf, because that's how they did a lot of idolatrous worship. But either way, it's terrible. He's changed the religion. They're not following the laws of God. And he's going to tell them, we're doing this out of convenience. Look, you don't want to travel all the way into the south. But he doesn't really care about their convenience. He's doing this because he's afraid, because he's worried he's going to lose the people. It's for his own personal gain. It's political, really. And so that's what, here we go back to Jehoram. Well, that's what he goes back to. Well, we don't need Baal, but we're going to keep this terrible system. It was a disaster from the beginning, and Jeroboam has always been the standard for a bad king until we had Ahab. So this is what he's doing. That's what it's telling us here. Verse 4, it says, now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep breeder, and he regularly paid the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. All right, so Moab is like a vassal state. So they're under their control. So Israel, the northern kingdom, controls Moab. And in part of this control, they have to pay tribute. 100,000. I mean, that's a lot, right? 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. Whose job is it to even count this? I don't want this job, you'd be counting forever. So this isn't a one-time payment. This is every year. You got to come up with 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. Well, this king, Mesha, he says, I don't want to do this. He doesn't want to continue to do this, but this is what he's stuck with. Now, I want to look at a couple of slides, and I think we might have seen some of these before. 21. So this king that we're talking about in Moab, he made this. This is the Mesha stele. It's in the Louvre in France, and it's from this time period. And when you read what's on it, can we see 23? So it just highlights some letters here. Their language was similar to Hebrew, but what is this Meshestel written by this king? And everyone's from this country. And what's it say? It talks about Omri, who was the greatest previous king in the north, and his descendants. That he 40 years he talks about being under the oppression of Israel and breaking free, which is what we're going to see him do in the next verse. It's going to mention the god of Moab, Chemosh, which it mentions in the Bible, and then it mentions the God of Israel, Yahweh, Jehovah. All this is maybe the oldest mention outside of the Bible in written history of the God of the Bible. There may be some older, but this is clearly one of the oldest because it's from the it'd be 800 and something BC. I mean, this is incredible. It mentions the capital of Moab, which is going to mention in this text. It's going to mention the house of David. And this is incredible, and people argue, oh, there's no evidence for the Bible's made-up stories. That's just silly. We've had this thing in a museum for decades. I mean, it's pretty well known. It also tells in here that what this king does when he pushes off the yoke of Israel, he fortifies his the northern border, so he has this kind of barrier between him and Israel. And so what we're going to see in this chapter is they're going to attack from the south because the north is fortified, which it talks about. He talks about all these things, but he leaves out, his losses and things like that. So it's pretty amazing. Can we see 25? This is just another piece found in the capital city by the same king. 26. This is just our geography. The Dead Sea. So Moab is here, just east of the Dead Sea. This is modern day Jordan, and so we're going to be attacking the Moabites here. And can we go up to 51? Okay, I think that's that Meshestel in the museum, and 52. Okay, so this king, he wrote that. Okay, that's what we're talking about right here in this passage. So verse 5, it said, but it happened when Ahab died that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. All right, so Ahab dies, and then first son, Ahaziah, who doesn't last very long, doesn't do anything about this rebellion. But the second son, he doesn't like this. He's not happy about this. And you think, well, why is the guy rebelling? Well, man, how much money would you be saving every year if you had to come up with 100,000 sheep and 100,000 rams skins? He's thinking, I can't afford this. And so he's like, we're just going to take the risk. Maybe he thinks that the sons of Ahab are weaker. Maybe he thinks they've got other problems to worry about. Are they really going to deal with Moab? It's just too much trouble. I'm sure that's what he's hoping. We see 69, John. So their capital here in Moab, that fortress is from the Crusaders. So that's made after the time. But this place where the capital is, it would be hard to attack because it's so high up. It's over 3,000 feet above sea level. So later on, the Crusaders built what you're seeing there. But can we see 70? And that's kind of the view from up at the capital of Moab. I'm looking out. So this is their spot. All right, well, verse 6, it says, so King Jehoram went out of Samaria at the time and mustered all Israel. So we're going to war. This guy says, I don't care if I got other problems. This guy doesn't want to pay what he owes us. We're going to go collect. It's war if he doesn't want to do it. And look, if he doesn't, anyone else that he's in charge of, they're going to start rebelling too, right? He's going to lose everything. If everyone thinks, well, he can't keep his kingdom or keep people under control, they'll rebel also. So it's like he has to. Well, then he went and he sent to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me to fight against Moab? And he said, I will go up. I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses. Well, Moab is way down in the south anyway. It's like a next door neighbor to Judah. So he reaches out to Jehoshaphat. Now, Jehoshaphat did help. Jehoshaphat did help Ahab previously when he had a battle with Assyria. Remember, he had this battle with Ben-Hadad up in the north. That was 1 Kings 22, and they end up reaching out to Micaiah. They said, don't you have a prophet here? And what happens when they go out to that battle? Man, Jehoshaphat almost dies. Remember, Ahab says, I'm going to disguise myself, but you dress up like a king and let's go out and see what happens. And they almost kill him. It's like, don't you remember that part? Yeah, it's like crazy. And but maybe they have an alliance. Maybe they have some kind of they have a peace at least between the two kingdoms at this point. What do you think? What does this guy do? What do you mean? Yes. And Jehoshaphat, he's a godly man, a good king. His father Asa was a good